Alright guys, buckle up, because the setup I'm seeing on the maps right now looks wild. We're heading into a winter that's shaping up to be colder, snowier, and just plain more relentless than what most of us have seen in years. I know we've had some wild winters in the past, but this one's already giving off some serious 2013 vibes. Remember that one? The kind of season where the cold just didn't quit, and every week felt like another battle between Arctic air and the next major storm system. Well, that's exactly the pattern I see building right now across the US as we move from mid-November into the heart of winter. So let's break it down. As we head into the middle and later part of November, the first real Arctic blast is gearing up to drop south out of Canada. I'm talking about temperatures that'll tumble fast. Highs in the 20s and 30s across the northern plains and Great Lakes, with feels-like temps dipping into the single digits at night. And once that cold air locks in, it's going to stay. By the last week of November, I'm expecting those brutal chills to reach deep into the Midwest, spreading through Chicago, Minneapolis, Detroit, Cleveland, all the way into the Ohio Valley, and even the interior Northeast. This first shot of Arctic air will likely bring our first widespread snow cover of the season. I wouldn't be surprised if cities like Minneapolis and Green Bay are sitting on 6 to 10 inches of snowpack by Thanksgiving. Even places like Chicago and Detroit could easily pick up their first measurable snowfalls of the season. And it won't just be flurries. We could be looking at 3 to 6 inches right out of the gate. Then comes December, and that's when this winter really starts flexing. The jet stream looks like it's setting up in that classic trough in the east, ridge in the west configuration. And that means cold air pouring out of Canada like a broken faucet. Snowstorm after snowstorm will ride along that boundary line, targeting the same areas over and over again. If you're in the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, or the interior Northeast, get ready. This is your year for some serious snowfall totals. By the way, if you'd like specific weather forecasts for your region or city, please leave them in the comments. I'll answer them individually as time allows. Also, if you like the video and subscribe to my channel, you'd be very grateful. Now, let's move on. I'm talking Chicago potentially finishing winter with 45 to 55 inches of snow, which is a solid 10 inches above their long-term average. Detroit, you're probably in that same ballpark, 50 inches or more by the time March rolls around. And Cleveland? Oh, Cleveland could easily top 70 inches this season, thanks to those strong northwest winds driving lake effect bands off Lake Erie all winter long. Now, let's shift north, the upper Midwest and northern plains. This is where the cold is going to be downright punishing. Fargo, Bismarck, Minneapolis. I think you're in for one of those old school winters where it feels like the snow just never melts. By February, I could see snow depths over a foot in most of that region, with total seasonal snowfall pushing 60 to 70 inches in Minneapolis and close to 80 inches across the lake, belts of northern Wisconsin and Michigan's Upper Peninsula. As we slide into the Northeast, the story turns even more interesting. Boston, Albany, Syracuse, and Buffalo. I think you're in for a wild ride. The pattern this year really favors those strong coastal systems that ride up the East Coast. Those nor'easter setups that dump heavy, wet snow inland while whipping coastal cities with wind and freezing rain. Boston could be looking at around 55 to 65 inches of snow, which is comfortably above normal. Albany might push towards 70. And Buffalo, I'm watching Buffalo closely because the lake effect potential this year looks massive. 100 inches isn't off the table. There, we could easily see multiple major events like we had back in 2013 and 2014 now. For the mid-Atlantic and the southern edge of the snow zone. Places like Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and even down toward the Tennessee Valley. This is where things get tricky, but also exciting. You're right on the battleground line this winter. That area where the cold air meets just enough moisture from the Gulf to spark those big surprise snow events. I think D.C. could see around 15 to 20 inches total, which would actually be their snowiest winter in several years. Philly probably lands closer to 25 or 30. And Pittsburgh, you could flirt with 45 inches by season's end. That's a solid, old-fashioned snow year. As for the South, yeah, I think you're going to see some winter mischief too. Northern Arkansas, parts of Oklahoma, even down into northern Mississippi and Alabama. Don't be shocked if you see a couple snow-to-ice setups this year. Dallas, you're probably looking at 1 or 2 winter events with light snow or freezing rain, while Nashville could easily rack up 5 to 10 inches over the season. And then, of course, the West has its own story. Out west, it's a classic split. Cold and snowy across the Pacific Northwest and Northern Rockies, but milder and drier for California and the desert Southwest. Seattle and Portland could pick up 10 to 15 inches of snow, more than usual, while the Cascades and Northern Rockies will get buried again. I'm talking 200 to 300 inches of snow in spots like Mount Baker, Big Sky, and Jackson Hole. Meanwhile, Salt Lake City could be looking at 70 to 90 inches total, which is just slightly above normal, but still impressive. And when it comes to the Southwest, Phoenix, Las Vegas, and much of Southern California expect another mild winter with below-average precipitation. But don't get too comfortable, because Northern California and the Sierra Nevada could still get hit with some powerful Pacific storms later in the season. I wouldn't be surprised if Tahoe ends up around 300 inches again this year. Now, what about temperatures? That's where this pattern really hits hard. The Midwest and Great Lakes are going to be the cold core of this winter. We're talking consistent below-average temperatures from late November all the way through February. It's that kind of winter where every time you think you're getting a break, another cold front barrels through. I wouldn't be surprised to see multiple polar vortex intrusions dropping temps, 20 to 30 degrees below normal for a few days at a time. The kind of cold that freezes pipes and makes the air sting your face when you step outside. Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Minneapolis. Expect daytime highs in the teens and 20s for stretches of January, with overnight lows dipping below zero. Even cities like Kansas City, St. Louis, and Cincinnati will get their share of Arctic blasts this year. The Northeast won't be spared either. Boston, New York, and Philly will likely see several weeks of steady below-average cold. If we're talking comparisons, this winter feels eerily similar to the legendary winter of 2013 to 2014, that one that had constant snowstorms. Deep cold, and those famous polar vortex headlines. The pattern we're seeing right now has the same setup. A strong ridge out west, deep trough in the east, and an active subtropical jet feeding moisture into those systems. It's a perfect recipe for one of those classic American winters, where the cold and snow just keep cycling through week after week. So to sum it up, we're looking at a winter that starts early, stays long and hits hard. The snow begins piling up by mid to late November, and just doesn't stop through February, maybe even lingering into March for the northern states. The Midwest and Great Lakes will be buried under snowpack for months. The Northeast will be bracing for nor'easters, and even parts of the South will see more winter action than usual. If you thought last year's winter was tame, this one's going to remind you what real cold feels like. The first Arctic chill is already forming up north, and it'll be sliding into the US within the next week, kicking off what looks like a relentless, snowy stretch ahead. So get the snow shovels ready. Fire up the space heaters. And if you're a snow lover, congratulations. This might be the winter you've been waiting for. All right, if you'd like specific weather forecasts for your region or city, leave your region or city in the comments. I'll answer them individually as I have time. Commenting is completely free. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.